capitalist. And I was like, what's a venture capitalist? Anything without relationships. I think it's really important that you have somebody who's supportive of whatever your dreams and goals are, whether they be of entrepreneurship, if you're building a startup, if you're, a creative, whatever it is. Like I wrote on Facebook and I was like, hey, I could either move to New York, move to London.
You have lived the life that any entrepreneur has lived. You just don't have the startup, but you're going through all those challenges.
I was like, there's all these apps that are putting people in relationships, but there is no app keeping you in relationships. I'm also broke. Mind you, I just got laid off. And she was like, you should try crowdfunding. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I think Tim can do it. And I said, Tim, who?
All right. Hello, everyone. Happy to have you back in yet another in-depth and power packed. As for my guest today, I've been a fan of her since the day I met her, which was at the alumni reunion, summer of 22. I have been following her journey, and I can say she brings all the glitz and the glamour of a celebrity combined with the work ethic, the discipline, and the wisdom of a billionaire. So how do you even begin to introduce or even sum up the journey of an individual who has 100x their career and their learning path by possibly diving into every creative, operational, and lucrative business endeavor there is? So when I asked Sequoia herself, she said, just say creator, operator, and investor, which is the truth. And it's summed up really well. And today we get to deep dive and unpack her journey and the journey behind these three titles. So without further ado, the woman and the legend that is Sequoia Blodgett.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
So yeah, as much as I would like to just dive into what you're doing at the moment, I do want to, quickly reverse back and start right at the beginning. Even let's start with your pre-DU work experience. I mean, landing your first job, and your work experience in media and production specifically. And, like the working hours, the routine, the challenges. But yeah, I'd let you do the talking.
So I think for me, my journey has always started in a vein of entrepreneurship, right? Because as a creative, you are technically an entrepreneur. You're out trying to find your own jobs, trying to figure out when you're booking your next job. So when I was 16 years old, I was super passionate about visuals. Like I didn't want to do anything except direct. I didn't care about anything else. I was focused on moving to LA. I'm from the Bay Area, right?
Woohoo! Yeah.
Wanted to move to LA, find a production company, get signed, because this was in the day where you were signed to production companies. They would go out, look for jobs for you, do the whole thing, right? So that was my vision. I had one company that I was so focused on, and they had the top directors in the world, like literally directing Italian Job, like FK Gray, and like all these and at that time, like music videos were massive. So I was drawn to the idea of just directing videos because as a creative, first of all, I want to be a dancer. So it's the whole other thing. But
I was actually thinking, because I was like, okay, when I'm 16 and I'm not thinking that I want to direct these. I'm thinking I want to be the singer. I want to be the camera on me. You're like, no, I want to be behind the camera, controlling the people and telling them what to do, because I have a vision. So this is where the difference comes in.
Yeah. Well, to your point, I wanted to be in front of it as a dancer first, right?
Okay.
I went to Loyola Marymount, which is a private Jesuit university in Los Angeles. And by way of going to Loyola, I was able to have two different majors. So I was a film major and a dance major. And I had to decide because both are equally demanding. Yes. And with the dance majors, they had been dancing since they were like 2. So
of course.
You get in there, you're like trying to play catch up, and you're like, okay, wait a minute. So I was like, all right, let me lean more into the film side and let me cast dancers, right? So even though I saw this vision of being a director and doing all the things, I also wanted to be a dancer. So I was like split. I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. And at that time, moving to LA, there used to be this dance studio called Millennium, where like the top dancers would go. It was like during the time when Britney Spears had like all her dancers. So they would go like take class from them, like master classes, like this whole thing. And I remember shooting this dance documentary for these two dancers, Shonique and Lizette. And they were like Britney's choreographers and like all these, and they were just so talented. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be behind the camera because I'm not even gonna play myself. I'm not gonna compete. I'm gonna get out here. I'm gonna cast dancers. I'm gonna direct music videos. That's what we're gonna do. So because I was equally passionate about directing, it was the one that like rose to the occasion of the two careers. And I stuck in it for a really, really long time. But that beginning tranche of it was so interesting because there were
the working hours might just be crazy. And
it was just being in film school and like, first of all, when you go to film school, you don't go to film school to direct music videos, right? So everybody's like, wait, you want to direct music videos? I'm so confused. Like, where's your film? so it was during the time where if you did want to direct music videos, you were expected to be a film director after that. It was like, that was like how you got to be a film director, right? And I was dating a guy and he would always take me to the Directors Guild of America. And he was like, look, let's just get you ready for your film. And I'm like, oh. Do films. I really love music videos, right?
Do a musical?
Yeah, and then I hate musicals. So that's a real weird disconnect, right? Because that would be the like average of the two, but it's like, no, I just want to do music videos. But I think also films intimidated me because they're so long, there's so much involved. You know, if you don't do it correctly, like if you don't do a music video correctly, you might have another opportunity. But a film director, like you are married to that job for an extended period of time. So I'm like, I'm just not ready for that, right? So I fully embraced myself as a music video director. My senior thesis was a music video. Like I literally found all these artists, like Craigslist was big then. So I like casted them off Craigslist. And then one of the group that I ended up doing the video for ended up like one of the artists in that group ended up being a big writer artist now. So it was just like this crazy journey of like trying to find my footing and then eventually landing. And it just took a lot. But I will say this, it definitely prepared me to be an entrepreneur and I didn't know that. Like I just was going through this process. But as an entrepreneur, you're consistently failing and trying and failing and trying and failing and trying, right? But as a director, you get this job, then you gotta go find another job, then you gotta go find another job. So you're like, it's this constant path of like proving yourself. And so for me, it was like, I got that first job. And then as time went on, the next job came and the next job came. And finally I got the job that like landed on TV, which was 106 in Park, which used to be this huge like show back in the day, right? So I had my first video landed on 106 in Park by this artist named K. Michelle. And once that happened, it was like, okay, this is my big break. I got it. We're going. And there was never a like moment, right? It was always like, even with that video being on 106 in Park, I had like new joint of the day. Like there was a day that I had 2 videos in the top 10 countdown on 106 in Park, which is crazy. Like most direct, that never happens, right? Because I was like producing such like work on a consistent basis. But I think as time went on, it was like the industry was shifting. And I knew that. And the reason I knew that is because my mentor, so I started working with this director named Ray K. And he directed everybody from all of early Destiny Child to like Soldier, their song with Lil Wayne, to Lady Gaga, Poker Face, to like, he had like all Justin Bieber, like all his early stuff. So I was like on set with him all the time, right? And that's also how I grew my career, because he was like, hey, let me alley-oop you some of these jobs because I have so much work.
So you got to work with all of these big names.
Yeah, like I was
in your career.
Yeah, exactly. But because of the relationships, right? And I think that's relevant to being an entrepreneur now, is like, you don't do anything without relationships, like nothing.
That's actually one of my questions later on, which we will move on to. But yeah, but also then after this, did the associate producer role come in after this where you get to work on American Idol, on this,
Yeah,
on the
that came.
backstage and
It came kind of
Dancing with the
simultaneously.
Stars?
Yeah.
Like, what?
It happened kind of simultaneously because when you're directing, like I was saying, like it's not consistent. So I'm like, okay, let me get on, because television is pretty consistent. So I'm like, let me get on TV, on the TV side too. So I'm working at CBS Television City, which is like in the smack dab in the middle of LA. And like all those shows taped on the lot, even if they weren't CBS shows, because CBS has like massive studios. So I worked at Television City while I was directing. And so I would be on set for Dancing with the Stars, So You Think You Can Dance, which was like the best.
Bold and Beautiful. I was like, no way.
Running backstage, like talking to whoever, like testing new shows out, all kind of crazy stuff. Sitting in their director's room, like, like giving whatever opinions I could. So it was a really, really good career. But the issue was tech was coming into play and it was starting to shift the industry. And my mentor, the one I was talking about earlier, knew that, right? So he was like, I don't know what we're going to do because the budgets were changing. So it's like, my biggest budget video was $250,000, like $250 million.
Right. Ooh.
And then fast forward, I'm getting calls from like Atlantic Records and they're like, yeah, we have 2,000. And I was like, for who?
Whoa, that is a huge drop.
I was like, you
that
mean
is
for the whole video?
Drop.
It's massive. So everybody was panicked. Everybody. They were like, what do we do? Like, you are, and it's crazy because I'm working under Ray K. And then there's this tier of directors that are like his level. And then there's a tier that's like, like the Hype Williams, Dave Meyers, like the huge directors. And now all of a sudden we're all on the same tier because the budgets are so low that we're all competing for the same job.
And that brings in its own set of challenges because everyone has different working styles and, whole
and just like skill, experience, right? So it's like, you got Beyonce on your reel. Look at me first. They were like, we're over here. We're gonna talk to him, even though the budget was so low. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it like disrupted the industry in a way that just wasn't functional for me. Like a lot of my peers kind of took a step back and we all just kind of like moved to do our own things. But for me, I was like, this is not, I can't, I gotta pay rent. I don't know, like all these names are cute. Like I gotta pay rent, So it's like, it made me shift completely.
And so do you think I'm sure you loved it, but do you think you'll ever go back to, seeing where technology is today? Do you think you'll go back to it, maybe?
So it's funny you say that.
Because I am coming to that because of what you're working on right now. Like, maybe that ties in somewhere.
A little bit.
Well, okay. So there were technological, challenges there. The work routine must be crazy. Was there a time where you felt like you were trying to just balance your work and your personal life, or just how crazy was that? Because that is something that, as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you went through as well.
Yeah, it was always like that, right? Because for me, I've always been very, very, very driven. Like it's just in my nature. So if I was dating from a personal perspective, like if I'm dating, he probably had something to do with the industry, right?
Right.
And it became like a working relationship and a personal relationship. And for me, as that started to build itself, I'm like, well, do I like you as a person? Or are we like just like connected because we both have this mutual interest of being directors, right?
Right.
And I think over time, I just couldn't figure that part out. But I think as I've grown and gotten older, I think it's really important that you have somebody who's supportive of whatever your dreams and goals are, whether they be of entrepreneurship, if you're building a startup, if you're, a creative, whatever it is, like that support system is massive, right? But I couldn't see the forest from the trees at the time because I was so focused on my career that I just did not care. I was like, whatever, you know what I mean? So it was difficult because those are very audacious goals. It's not like I'm like working at a corporation. It's like, no, like I'm driven to direct, but not even for just like anybody. It's like the top stars in the world. So it's like, you have to be super audacious. There's something in you that has to be like, yeah, I can do that. Like the confidence and the audacity, really. Cool. Like I am totally good with directing this video of this like major superstar. Like no problem. So the person
so you were dating at that time, yes.
And then, the person that you're dating needs to be on board with that for sure. Yeah. And he was a director too. So, and he was ahead of me. So he was directing films, right? But then I always kept thinking like, it was just a weird dynamic to me. It was like, I want you to mentor me in a way, but like, we're also like romantically involved. And then I kind of got to the point where I was like, what is this relationship actually? Like, are we dating because of the career, or are we like, do we really like each other? So I think that was more so where I kind of got hung up. And then it was always like the critique of like the project, or you could have done this differently, or what about doing this? But I don't think it was purposeful. I think it was like out of care, right? But
me, and like, sometimes it just naturally comes in when you're working in the same field, but then
but sometimes I got offended. It's like, why don't you think I'm great? Because I think I'm great. You know what I mean? So it was just hard to like grasp that. But it wasn't like he wasn't doing it out of malice. He was literally doing it because he cared, so it just didn't work out. But every relationship after that, like I had some tie-in to whatever I was doing, because that's who you're around. So you're constantly meeting people in the industry, whether that be from entrepreneurship or as a filmmaker, like that's your community, right? So it's kind of natural that you gravitate into that. And now that I know that, I'm more open to it, but then I just kind of like, So.
Yeah, so okay. Well, there you have it. And then how did that take you to DU?
Yeah, so
where did that connection come in?
Yeah, we got to the point where it was like, okay, I have no money. This industry has drained me for every dime I have. Cool. Yes. Let me figure something else out. So I actually was in the Bay Area, and I had my friend. So I was in LA, moved to Atlanta because I was like, I can maximize the industry better being in Atlanta because all the music was being made here. So I was like, all right, let me just go to Atlanta, figure out what that ecosystem looks like, circumvent the record label altogether, make relationships with managers and artists, and just direct like through like on my own, right? Which I think it helped and hurt me simultaneously. It helped me because I had the relationships, right? But then they can underbid. They can like say, hey, we're gonna give you this job for like $2,000. Whereas if I was in LA, I had the structure of my agent, I had the structure of my production company or my rep. I had all the people who would support me in getting that number to where it needed to be. So I think that was a little, tricky, but I grew my career massively when I moved to Atlanta. So fast forward, everything dried up. I took a role at Clear Channel as senior video producer. So that was like stepping away from the industry just a little bit. So I had some stability. So worked at Clear Channel, which was great because it got me into television. So I started directing television spots for radio, which was crazy. Right?
I know. I saw radio coming in as well. I was like, whoa. So music, and then we have radio, but I'm sure you have some favorite memories from that as well. Yeah. Although I don't know how you did it, but tell me more about that.
Yeah, so that's where that came from. That guy. So that's actually from 2.7 Kiss FM, the radio station in LA. It's like the big Ryan Seacrest in the morning, like that show. So yeah, that's the award for that. But that was
because you could just say that was an Oscar, and at this point we would believe it. So, but yes, tell me about that.
Yeah, so that happened at Clear Channel by way of directing just constant content for all of these radio stations, right? So literally, as I was there, it was great. I had stability. My boss was the best boss on the planet. He was like, if you need to step away and do music videos, go do your thing. Like, I don't even care. Like, just make sure you're doing what you need to do here from a content perspective, and you can go out. Had every access to every piece of equipment that I've ever wanted. Like, no issues. Like, completely great job. Got laid off. Like, market downturn. We gotta cut this agency down because it was Clear Channel's agency, right? Creative Services Group. So once the market downturn hit, they're like, we gotta cut this agency down. And one of my role was one of the roles that got cut. Like, they cut pretty much half the agency, right? And so that messed me up because that was my stability. Even as I was directing, like, okay, I at least have a constant paycheck coming in. Did not have it anymore. So I literally put on it was Facebook. I wrote on Facebook and I was like, hey, I could either move to New York, move to London, or go back to LA, right? So London was just like this long shot, like, let me just go live a different dream type of situation. Just throw it out there. New York was like, I'm curious. And LA was my stability. Like, I knew if I went back to LA, I'd be good, right? Went back to LA. Well, no, my homegirl who actually graduated Loyola before, like a few years ahead of me, reached out and she was like, hey, Sequoia, pack it up, come here. You can live here until you figure out what you want to do. Bet. The whole house up. My brand new BMW that I had just bought after getting laid off. That's wild, right? I'm like, what's the this? Just bought it, and I was like, we out. So I packed it up, moved back to LA, moved in with her, and then the opportunity of Alexa Cafe presented itself. So Alexa Cafe was this all-girls entrepreneurship boot camp, right? I am from the Bay Area, but I'm from the other side of the Bay Area. So there is Silicon Valley, and then there's now East Bay is now infiltrated by Silicon Valley, but at the time it was not, right?
Right.
So I didn't know anything about venture capital. I was like, I don't know what this is, but we're
talking 2013.
2014 now.
2014.
No, not even. I think it was the beginning of the end of 2013, because I was at Draper by 2014. Right. So it had to be at the end of 2013. So a lot happened in that 2013 transition. There was a lot of, awards going on, but also like transitions in my life. So
that is pretty much, I
literally applied for this role, not knowing anything about it. All I knew was this camp needed instructors and specifically production for me. So I wasn't even going in as tech. Like, I was like, we're going to do brand and production. And they had a partnership with Adobe. So Adobe was doing like how to build your website, and Adobe Scratch, how to do web design and web coding. And I was like, okay, cool. I have Photoshop experience. I have production experience from shooting, photography, and like all this stuff. I'll do that segment of the camp, right?
Right.
Into this camp, these girls are 10 years old to 15 years old. So 10 is where it started, 15 is where it maxed out. We get to this camp, and I'm like, this is gonna be fun. We're talking to young camp. We are in camp with like Sheryl Sandberg's daughter. It was like all these like really Silicon Valley highfalutin, like the CEO of YouTube and like Meta and like all these things, right? Facebook, whatever. And we're supposed to teach them how to build these companies so that they can then pitch to venture capitalists. And I was like, what's a venture capitalist? What are we talking about? So
wow.
It was crazy. So here I am teaching them like the brand side. They're creating Scratch, like they're coding for their companies, these companies.
Right.
Mind you, 10 to 15 years old, they're companies. And then they come to me, and then we shoot product shots for them, and we do like commercials for them and like all these things. And so I really got carried away with it. And I was all entrepreneurial with my kids. And one of the campers was like, one of the instructors was like, Sequoia, you're really entrepreneurial. Like, I don't know what it is, but you have taken this to a whole nother level. She was
Because
like,
you so far you have lived the life that any entrepreneur has lived. You know, you just don't have the startup, but you're going through all those challenges.
Exactly. And I didn't even know. I was just like having fun. Like, you put me in camp, I'm ready to go. So like,
Exactly. And now
time.
for music video, you were working with kids and, you know, wow.
Yeah. So one of the instructors, Jamie, she was like a student at NYU or some school in New York. And she was like, you should look at this program, Draper University. And I was like, all right. So I look at it and I was like, oh, this looks like camp for adults. I'm so excited.
Pretty much.
That was so much fun. Like, I'm like a big kid, right? So I'm just like, I want to do that. So
wow.
Like, I just remember looking at the website and it's like this like group of people running into the water with their clothes on. And I'm like, yes. Looks awesome.
Those pool jumps. Those pool jumps.
It wasn't the pool. It was that survival, you know, the big
Oh, they're running into the
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, that looks fun. So I applied, and of course you need a company. Like, right. So it was crazy. I literally had this idea because obviously my relationship life was like all over the place. So it's like, there's all these apps. I think Tinder was hot then, and maybe Hinge was a different type of app then. It was around. It was just not what the brand it is today.
Right.
And something maybe no, I don't even think Bumble existed.
Bumble is not there. Yeah.
No, I don't think it existed. I know League was coming into play because their founder came to Draper to speak, and we met her, Amanda. So I was like, there's all these apps that are putting people in relationships, but there is no app keeping you in relationships. So I was like, I had this idea, and I was like, I am going to create a platform for relationship coaches, right? Not just people you can swipe on, but once you get into the relationship, how do you stay in the relationship, right? So this is my brain genius idea. So I'm also broke. Mind you, I just got laid off.
I'm telling you, this story, you're already there. Even before you're at Draper, the entrepreneurial journey is already there.
It's crazy. So like just got laid off, had this little stipend from Alexa Cafe, and you know, that was being like, I had to pay for everyday life with that, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, cool. So 10,000 to go to camp? What are we doing? Like, how are we gonna pay for this, right? Yeah. So what I did was I talked to Carol, who is no longer at Draper, but she was the COO at the time. And she was like, you should try crowdfunding. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Because to me, crowdfunding meant begging, right? I was like, I don't want to, first of all, I don't want to tell people I'm broke. Like, I was this like director that had like huge videos on MTV and BET and like all these and VH1, and now I'm broke. Like that is not, I don't want to do, like that is embarrassing. So like I did not want to do that, right? I'm like so aversely against it. But the other thing was I also applied for Jesse Draper scholarship. So I was like, well, hopefully that will come in. And Jesse Draper, for you guys that don't know, is Tim's daughter. So I was like, hopefully that will come in and then I won't have to do this. And so I got contacted and they were like, hey, we actually awarded it to somebody else, but we did end up giving you a partial scholarship. So I was like, no, now I have to crowdfund.
Oh.
But
and so did you? Or?
Yes. A part of me was like, you just gotta do it. Like, what else are you gonna do? So I do it, and I reach out to one of my friends who's been my friend since we missed a very beginning of my life. I used to work in radio, right? Yes. So one of my friends who I used to work in radio with, I reached out to him, and he worked at the largest radio station, like AM radio station, talk radio in pretty much the world, right? KFI 640. So I said, hey, I'm crowdfunding. Can you donate to my campaign? And he was like, well, why don't you just come on radio and talk about it? I am embarrassed.
It's like crowdfunding. You thought that was hard, then to go on radio and talk about it.
Like, you want me to go on national radio and tell everyone? Like, no. So he was like, but no, let's contextualize this. Why don't you bring somebody from Draper and we can build a story around it? And I was like, oh, okay. It's looking a little sexier to me.
It's
so
getting
I
better.
reached out and I go, since Jessie had awarded me the scholarship, do you want to do the radio show with me? And she was at New York Fashion Week, so she couldn't do it. So then Carol calls me and she was like, well, I think Tim can do it. And I said, Tim who? She was like, Tim Draper. I think we can get him scheduled and we can get him down there. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Mind you, this man has never met me a day in his life. Okay. He is about to jump on a plane. That is some trust, by the way. He is about to jump on a plane and fly out to do a radio show with somebody that he don't like. I could have never shown up. It's so many things that could have gone wrong with that. But he trusted. And that was like what I loved about him. I'm like, he is so.
I was thinking the same thing because, you don't have billionaire venture capitals do things like that. But
no, not at all. So I'm like, okay. So I'm scrambling trying to get 640 KFI to schedule it to meet his schedule, right? And they get it done. And I literally go to the radio station and I'm sitting there and my stomach is turning. I'm like, what did I just sign up for?
Oh.
I have never met this man before. And at that time he was campaigning for 6 Californias. So if you guys don't know, he wanted to break California up into 6 different states. And KFI was the biggest platform you could possibly do that on because it is the most controversial platform. All the controversial talk radio hosts on there, Rush Limbaugh, all the ones, right? Hannity, all of them. So I'm like, okay.
In the middle of all of this.
Not up for it, but we gonna rock with it.
With your partial scholarship, with that radio interview.
All of it. Because they want to talk to him about 6 Californias. They do not care about Draper University. Mind you, I need my money. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So I'm sitting in the lobby just like, I was like, yeah, I have a platform. Yeah, it looks just like yours.
Things not to do as an entrepreneur.
Doing a TV show called Startup You. I'm on the TV side of it. I know that your investor is supposed to be your partner and not just like somebody giving you money. Next, after this particular milestone in order to raise capital, because sitting in the lobby just like scared. Because I'm like, I don't know what this is. And he's like, how did you get Tim Draper? Am I going to Draper? I like completely pivoted the idea. Founder.
Through it, like no matter what, I'm going to get this done. That trust and foundation is instantly built.
Feeling of failure. So as I was building, I tried everything. Create a course for Kanye West. How would you do it? It's very different to build a business versus building a venture backable business. 2 very different verticals. So the thing is, when you're finding a co-founder, you have to they need to understand very clearly venture and how venture works. Venture, but then Draper puts your mind in a different, you're like light years ahead of the rest of the world. It's very strange. Like you go into Draper, you come back out and everybody's talking about regular stuff. And you're like, but we're going to Mars. Great listener, you will be a good entrepreneur. Moved so insanely fast with this business. Like it looks like we're in the process of fundraising now.